March 4, 2024, 6:15 a.m. As the morning mist hung over Portland Station, Oregon, I was heading to my volunteer work at the library. I had left home a little earlier than usual because there were newly donated children's books waiting to be organized. The cold morning air stung my cheeks. On my way to the station, I remembered what my husband used to say when he was a police officer: trust your instincts. That morning, there was an unsettling feeling in the air. The morning birdsong, usually audible, was strangely quiet. As I approached the platform, my eyes caught an odd shadow. It was too early for the morning commute rush. At the edge of the platform, a small figure was huddled, standing still. That's strange. I unconsciously stopped in my tracks. Over 30 years of teaching experience had honed my instincts for detecting when something was wrong with a child. A boy wearing a dirty gray hoodie. A body so thin it hurt to look at his back. Perhaps 10 years old. The cold March wind whipped at his worn jeans. His socks were full of holes, and his sneakers were worn down at the heels. As I got closer, my heart began to race. A familiar silhouette. But that was impossible. Because the boy in front of me had been officially declared dead a year ago, my grandson. Grandma. I'm hungry. My body froze at the thin voice. A familiar voice. A slightly stuttering but gentle tone. I remembered how many times that voice had begged me, "Grandma, read this book to me." The boy slowly raised his face. A pale complexion. Under his sunken eyes were clear signs of exhaustion. His cheeks were hollow, his lips dry and cracked. And then, the decisive evidence. A small surgical scar behind his left ear. A reminder of the middle ear surgery he had when he was 3. I had applied ointment to that scar countless times. Kaizen. Is it really you, Kaizen? My voice was trembling. My grandson, who had been declared dead, was definitely here. My hands were shaking, and even my knees were wobbling. But this was no time to lose composure. I needed to get him to a safe place. Memories rushed back. 3 years ago, my son Tim went through a divorce with his then-wife Sarah. In what could be called child neglect, the court granted Tim custody of Kaizen. I cut back on my retirement library volunteer hours to support with childcare. Morning drop-offs and pickups, making lunches, helping with homework. But it wasn't a burden. Kaizen loved books. When I read to him, he would lean forward on my lap, listening intently. He never tired of dinosaur books in particular. When I started explaining, you see, the Tyrannosaurus, he would listen with sparkling eyes. 2 years ago, Tim met Amy, a social worker. She had an 8-year-old son named Aiden. Intelligent and graceful Amy appeared before us like a savior. After marriage, she played the role of the perfect housewife, and both my son and I were touched by her efforts as a mother of 2 boys. But looking back, there were signs. Amy was overly eager to take photos of Kaizen. Especially that day at the Columbia River campsite, she kept taking pictures of Kaizen obsessively. "It's for growth records," she said. Her eyes were somewhat vacant then. In the evening, Kaizen disappeared, saying he was going to the bathroom. Sudden heavy rain. Desperate search. And 3 days later, death declaration without a body. Police processed it as an accidental death. The conclusion was that he had been swept away by the river. But my instincts told me differently. Amy's behavior was also strange. She showed no signs of distress. If anything, she was too calm. Without hesitation, I took Kaizen home. With trembling hands, I made warm stew and changed him into my late husband's old pajamas. When I helped him change, I noticed bruises on his back. Signs of abuse, perhaps. Kaizen silently spooned the food into his mouth. The scene was so surreal that I rubbed my eyes several times. Eventually, I steeled myself and picked up my phone. I dialed my son's number. After 3 rings, Tim answered. I could hear children's cheerful voices in the background. Mom? Why are you calling so early? Tim, listen. Kaizen is alive. He's at my house right now. On the other end of the line, my son responded in confusion. What? Mom, what are you talking about? He's right here, playing with Legos with Aiden. A chill ran down my spine. Kaizen holding a spoon in front of me. The Kaizen playing at my son's house. And Amy's unnatural photo taking. Her unnaturally calm demeanor. Everything started to connect. Amy's terrible secret was finally taking shape. I told my son, desperately trying to control my trembling voice. Tim, call the police. Right now. The Kaizen at your house isn't the real Kaizen. I'm beginning to understand what Amy has done. The hour until the police arrived felt like an eternity. After eating, Kaizen fell asleep on my sofa, exhausted. His sleeping face was as defenseless as a baby's, occasionally trembling slightly. Before calling the police, I decided I needed a trusted advisor. I contacted Mike Wilson, my husband's former colleague who now works as a private investigator. He would surely assess the situation calmly. Mary, I'm coming right over. Don't let anyone see him until then. Mike's voice carried its usual steadiness. 30 minutes later, Mike arrived at my house. He checked on the sleeping Kaizen and photographed his injuries and bruises. Then he gently woke Kaizen and began to talk to him softly. Kaizen, don't be scared. Would you tell us what happened? At first, Kaizen remained silent, looking frightened, but gradually began to speak. His testimony revealed something far more horrific than we had imagined. That day, when I went to use the bathroom, there was a strange man waiting. He said Mom asked him to. According to Kaizen's testimony, he had been kidnapped as part of a plan. Everything at the campsite had been meticulously prepared by Amy. They put me in a car and took me to an old building. The windows were high up, I couldn't see outside. But they gave me books. They told me to study. The place of confinement was an abandoned house in the suburbs. Minimal food and water. Educational books were provided, but going outside was strictly forbidden. Amy would come to check on him occasionally. 3 days ago, no one came anymore. I was so hungry. I removed the old boards from the window and escaped. Mike calmly took notes, nodding occasionally. His testimony is sufficiently detailed for a child, he whispered to me. Just then, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw 2 uniformed officers and 1 detective in plain clothes. Mike greeted them and briefly explained the situation. The police sprang into action. One began taking Kaizen's statement, another took mine. The plainclothes detective was on the phone requesting backup. Mrs. Mary, we've sent another team to your son's house. We'll secure suspect Amy. Just as I felt relief at those words, my cell phone rang. It was Tim. Mom. Amy. Amy ran away with Aiden. Right before the police arrived. A chill ran down my spine. This was the worst possible development. But that was just the beginning. Mike's laptop displayed shocking investigation results. Mary, I looked into Amy's background. She has a criminal record. 10 years ago, her previous husband's child. The article displayed on Mike's laptop was from a local Idaho newspaper 10 years ago. 8-year-old suspicious death, mother claims innocence. The woman in the photo was undoubtedly a younger Amy. Her name then was Amy Clark. That was her maiden name, Mike continued. Her stepchild died in an accident. Drowning. The insurance paid out in full. After that, her husband also died in an unexplained accident. I nearly collapsed into my chair. She had killed someone else's child, and even killed her own father. And now, the same thing to Kaizen. A young detective approached us. We've checked the station's security camera footage. Before Kaizen appeared, a black SUV was parked there. An adult male was driving. Likely an accomplice. Truth after truth emerged, making my head spin. But reality wouldn't wait. My phone rang again. It was Tim. Mom, we've located Amy's family home. 3 hours south of Portland. Her sister should be living there now. Tim, don't go alone. I cried out desperately. I heard that dangerous tone in my son's voice, the same strong sense of justice his father had. I know. I've already reported it to the police. I'm about to give my statement. His calm response gave me a little relief. Just then, Mike found new information. Mary, here's Amy's bank transaction history. There have been regular monthly withdrawals over the past year. The recipient is. He pointed at the screen. James Hunter. 3-time offender. Has served time for kidnapping and extortion. He must be the man who helped with the confinement, I realized. As we dug deeper, Amy's plan became clear. She had prepared everything before the marriage. Purchasing the abandoned house. Contacting accomplices. Even preparing insurance claim documents. Look at these papers, the detective handed me a document. Suspect Amy filed an insurance claim 1 week after the accident. Usually, claims without a body take months to process. She had prepared remarkably detailed documentation. It's as if. Yes, this is clearly a practiced method. Just then, the doorbell rang again. Mike checked the peephole and quickly opened the door. You must be Hunter. Give up. We've traced all your bank accounts. I held my breath. Standing at the door was the black SUV driver from the security camera footage. Amy's accomplice. The man raised his hands without resistance. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything, he said in a tired voice. That woman is insane. At first, I thought it was just insurance fraud. But it wasn't. She's collecting children. The room's atmosphere froze at those words. Aiden too. I mumbled. Aiden isn't her real child either. Hunter nodded heavily. 3 years ago, in winter. In Wyoming. Hunter's testimony revealed a truth far more horrific than we had imagined. Over the past 10 years, Amy had kidnapped at least 5 children. Her method was sophisticated, always combining death declarations with insurance fraud. She always targets wealthy single-parent families. Approaches them as a social worker, gets married, and then. The detective frowned while taking notes of Hunter's testimony. The children are confined and then transferred to other families, Hunter continued. Amy has clients. Wealthy couples struggling with infertility. They can't wait for legal adoption procedures. So. Wait, I was confused. Then, Aiden. He was the son of a Wyoming doctor. Michael Brown, who disappeared 3 years ago. Amy started raising him as Aiden. Memories flashed in my mind. Aiden being left-handed. The oddness Kaizen had pointed out several times. But in the photos, the child was right-handed. The police headquarters, which had become the investigation center, was being updated with new information by the minute. We've analyzed the surveillance camera footage, the young detective pointed to a large screen. Suspect Amy checked into a motel in Southern Oregon 3 hours ago. Aiden, no, Michael is with her. There are more accomplices. A veteran detective spread out a map. Bank transfer records over the past decade reveal at least 3 cooperating organizations. Creating forged birth certificates. Arranging fake adoptions. And money laundering. Suddenly, excitement swept through headquarters. Suspect vehicle spotted. The radio crackled. Heading south on Highway 5. A patrol officer identified it from a speeding violation. All units, form a perimeter, the commander shouted. Don't provoke them. There's a child in the vehicle. Tim and I watched intently as helicopter footage was displayed on the headquarters' large screen. Amy's white SUV weaved through traffic, pursued by police cars. Mom, Tim grabbed my hand. Amy completely fooled me. She seemed so gentle. Don't blame yourself, I placed my hand on my son's shoulder. We were all deceived by her. Suddenly, shocking footage appeared on the screen. Amy's car slammed on its brakes and pulled over to the shoulder. The driver's door opened, and Amy jumped out. In her hand was what appeared to be a gun. "Don't shoot," the commander yelled into the radio. "The child is." Then, an unexpected turn of events occurred. Aiden, no, Michael, leaped out of the passenger seat and tackled Amy. "Stop it!" The boy's cry was picked up by the patrol car's dash cam. "I don't want to lie anymore." The gun fell from Amy's hand. The tactical unit moved in unison. In the chaos, I thought I saw a look of relief on Michael's face on the screen. At the moment of arrest, Amy was laughing. "I was just trying to give them happy lives. Rescuing them from unhappy homes." "Be quiet," I raised my voice unexpectedly. "You destroyed these children's lives, their parents' lives, our lives." July 2024. In the waiting room of St. Luke's Hospital's Child Psychiatry Department. I was waiting for Kaizen to come out of his session. Weekly counseling. 4 months had passed. "Grandma," Kaizen approached with a smile. His shoulders seemed a little more relaxed than before. "Today I talked about dinosaurs. The doctor didn't know about Pachycephalosaurus, so I taught her about it. I suppressed the urge to hug him. The therapist had told me, please respect the distance where his heart feels safe." "That's wonderful. I'm sure the doctor learned something new." I smiled gently. "Your father's coming to pick us up. He should be here soon." The trial concluded a month ago. Amy received a 15-year prison sentence. More trials are pending. Her criminal organization was dismantled. Her accomplices were arrested one after another. "What about Aiden? I mean, Michael?" Kaizen asked. "He has a psychological evaluation today. We can see him afterward." Michael Brown has reunited with his real parents. However, 3 years of memories don't fade easily. He still responds to the name Aiden. His real parents decided not to rush, choosing to wait for his heart to heal. The elevator opened, and Tim appeared. "Sorry I'm late. The company meeting ran long." My son's face had changed. Gone was his former indecisive expression, replaced by the face of a responsible father. The divorce mediation was complete, and he now shares joint custody of Kaizen and Michael. "Dad, are we still going to the park today?" "Yes, Michael will be there too. His mother just called." As we got into the car, I remembered when we first reunited with Michael at the shelter. "I'm sorry," he said through tears. "I was forced to take Kaizen's place, but actually, I wanted to meet Kaizen. I was so lonely all this time." At those words, Kaizen silently hugged Michael. An embrace of forgiveness more eloquent than words. Though not related by blood, they had truly become brothers. When we arrived at the park, Michael was waiting with his parents. "Kaizen. Michael." The boys ran to each other and exchanged high fives. Their new way of greeting. 2 sets of parents watching over them. We exchanged quiet smiles. "Mary," Michael's mother, called out to me. Seeing the children smile gives me hope. Yes, I nodded. The wounds won't heal easily. But we have time. In the twilight at the park, the two boys began playing tag. Their laughter dissolved gently into the sky. One spring afternoon in 2025 at the library. While shelving newly arrived picture books, I reflected on the year that had passed since that day. "Mary," my colleague Janet called out. "Another interview request. This time it's for a national network documentary." I quietly shook my head. After the incident, our experience was repeatedly featured in the media as a warning about a new type of kidnapping called ghost children. It led to the discovery of similar cases. Human trafficking disguised as adoption. Staged accidental deaths. Tragedies born from twisted love. I'll decline the interview. The children need a normal life now. From the library's large windows, I could see the schoolyard. Kaizen and Michael often stopped by after school. They both started attending the same elementary school. Thanks to the principal's consideration, they were placed in the same class. "Grandma." A familiar voice rang out. I turned to find Kaizen and Michael standing there, both in their school uniforms. Michael's name tag read Brown. He was gradually reclaiming his original identity. "Are there any new books?" "Yes, there's a new dinosaur encyclopedia." "And?" I pulled a book from the shelf. "This one too." The cover read, "Stories for Healing Hearts." It was a picture book written by a child psychologist. Following the incident, many experts published books about children's emotional care. I was involved as a supervisor. "I want to show this to our teacher," Michael said. "Their homeroom teacher understands their past. She doesn't give them special treatment but gently supports them when needed." "Oh, Dad's here." Kaizen pointed out the window. Tim was parking his car. He now volunteers on weekends at an NPO preventing child trafficking. "Michael, your parents are here too." The Browns' car had arrived as well. The two sets of parents had designated every Friday as Family Day. Picnics in the park, movie watching, normal family happiness. "Grandma, are you coming too?" "Yes, in a little while." I pulled out some documents, copies of Amy's trial records. Her sentence was finalized. Life imprisonment. Further investigations continue into the facilities that overlooked her crimes and the people who helped with the deception. Mike Wilson is now helping investigate similar cases across the country. His work has influenced the creation of new legislation, the Ghost Children Prevention Act. Adoption screening has become more stringent, and the process for declaring deaths has been revised. My phone vibrates, a reminder for psychological counseling. Though now only monthly, the sessions with the two boys continue. Trauma doesn't disappear easily. But they have allies. Family, friends, and professionals. "Mary," Janet called out. "Have you thought about starting a new reading group for children dealing with trauma?" Her suggestion warmed my heart. What I learned this past year was that connections with others are the most powerful medicine for wounded hearts. Outside, cherry blossoms were dancing, and children's laughter echoed. I'm ready, I picked up my bag. Let's go. The breeze of a new season gently caressed my cheek.